26 countries sang in the grand final of the Eurovision Song Contest 2019. That was on Saturday. Today is Monday. The dust has settled. Porrig is in Ireland. I am back in London, and I think we need to talk about the split results. Are you ready? Let's do
this.
Slight delay there, but don't delay in getting your DNA test from My Heritage. In any case, Porrig, we're talking about the grand final. The jury and the televoters, they had very different opinions this year. Before we start, let's just quickly show you the overall results. This is the combined jury and televote. Your top 5 were the Netherlands, Italy, Russia, Switzerland, and Norway.
And then it was Sweden, Azerbaijan, North Macedonia, Australia, and Iceland.
And at the other end of the spectrum, in the bottom 5 overall, we have Spain, Israel, Germany, Belarus, and United Kingdom. All right, looking at the jury results overall, the top 5 were Sweden, North Macedonia, the Netherlands, Italy, and Azerbaijan.
And then we had Australia, Czech Republic, Switzerland, Russia, and Malta.
And bringing up the rear, it was Belarus, San Marino, United Kingdom, Israel, and WTF Spain. And then on the televote, the top 5 were Norway, the Netherlands, Italy, Russia, and Switzerland.
And then we had Iceland, Australia, Azerbaijan, Sweden, and somehow San Marino.
And in the bottom 5, it was Malta, Belarus, Czech Republic, UK, and Germany. Norway got screwed by the juries. 291 televote points, only 47 jury votes. How do you explain it?
I don't know what is to explain, because I can kind of understand where the juries are coming from, because I think a lot of people liked Norway, and a lot of people were probably like, oh, Norway's a nice song, I'll vote for it because it's probably going to need the points because nobody else is going to vote for it. Because I think all of Europe, while all of Europe clearly liked it, I don't think many people would have expected Norway to not only do so well in the televote, but to win the televote and to be about 30 points ahead of their nearest competition. Because even like, I like the song. I love the song. It's one of my favorites. But compared to some of its competition, it is relatively basic. And its staging was relatively basic. They didn't have all this crazy things, say, like they didn't have the slickness of Switzerland or the dancers like Cyprus. And yet somehow they won over Europe. But I can see where the juries were coming from, because they were probably like, this is quite basic and they'll rank above. Whereas, see, the public can only vote for their favorite, and the public aren't doing all this ranking and comparing, and they just go and, yeah, so... A long story short, yeah, I can see why the juries marked them low.
Yeah, so Norway finished 5th overall, we should say, but they finished 1st in the televote, and with the jury, they were ranked 15th. So that's a difference of 14 places. They were the country most hurt by the jury, a difference of 244 points and 14 rank ordinals. The country that was screwed over by the jury the second most was Iceland. This is a difference of 138 points. The televote gave them 186. The jury gave them 48. In terms of rank ordinals, they were 14th with the jury, but 6th with the televoters. I gotta say, this is an example of where the jury, each juror has to put their name by the country. It's publicly available, and I think maybe some jurors were put off with all the controversy that surrounded Iceland. They didn't want their name associated with that controversy, potentially. Surely there are some jurors who simply wouldn't have liked the song, but I do think that that broader picture of the controversy may have impacted some jurors on an individual basis.
Yeah, well, I find it, I haven't looked in depth, but I don't imagine many Israeli jurors, for example, were dishing out points to Hatari. And it is a very divisive entry that you either like it or you don't. And those who like it tend to like it a lot, and those who don't like it tend to not like it at all. And there are very few who are kind of like in the middle ground when it comes to Hatari. So, yeah, and see, it's weird. What do judges, when a jury is asked to vote on the vocals, do they think a vocal is something that is nice and angelic? And do they appreciate Clemens and Matthias' style of singing? Because that obviously is a talent in itself, but does that register with some of these musical experts across Europe?
Yeah, it's a really good point. But good for Iceland for coming 10th, a top 10 finish. They are back in this after a few years in the wilderness. I think that they raised the profile of Eurovision in Iceland. And I think Iceland's going to have renewed ambition now. And again, they're going to know quirky acts from Iceland can do well. It does not have to be a balladeer like Johanna. You can send something out there and loopy and still slay. Russia. Now, they came overall third again. Sergei Lazarev finished third in 2016. In the televote, they were ranked fourth, and in the jury vote, they ranked ninth. But they still came out third overall. They had the third biggest differential between jury and televote, a difference of 119 points. Yeah. Sergei's hugely popular in all these former Soviet republics and also anywhere that, there's a Russian diaspora. Vocally, he was great. Visually, it was quite impressive. I'm impressed that he did so well because this is not a pop song. It's very much musical theater, but he still managed to finish third overall. And I think that speaks to a few things. One, his popularity, but two, the quality of his vocals, the quality of his stage presence. The juries were clearly not as impressed as the people, putting him way down in ninth. But I think that Russia often has an uphill climb with the juries, again, because jurors have to put their names publicly out there, attached to an entry, and there is to some extent a stigma attached to voting for Russia, I believe.
But I think this time, unlike 2016, there was never the same buzz, at least outside of the bubble. I don't know what it was like on the ground in Tel Aviv, but he wasn't one of the acts that people were talking about. Everybody was the Netherlands, Italy, Iceland, and then rehearsals came and Australia were added to the mix. But nobody was ever talking about Sergei. And even though he had the 7 boxes, then Macedonia came and did very similar staging, not quite as complex, but they still had multiple Tamaras, the way he had multiple Sergeis. And then she was kind of not exactly the same song or genre, but it's not a million miles away. And I suppose if the juries are comparing and contrasting, they looked at Tamara's vocals and they looked at Sergei's vocals, and she came out on top and she got their markings. And because she probably got a lot of jury markings from Eastern Europe that could usually be relied on going Russia's way. And and I think obviously a certain amount of it was political because people were pointing out today that all the Georgian jury marked Sergei dead last in the final. What a coincidence. But yeah, I don't think it was as, like they were saying there was juries marking him last in 2016, but I don't think it was the same political. I don't think there was the same political bias this time around because countries like Sweden and Germany gave him high marks. Western countries gave him high marks. There were just simply better songs this year.
Yeah, and I think if we look at the broader picture as well, the volume, obviously there's still a political crisis between Russia and the Ukraine, but I think in international media, the volume's been dialed down a bit, so it's just not as present. And jurors are people, they are subject to the same media landscape, ecosystem as the rest of us. And yeah, it was just less talked about. And also the fact Ukraine wasn't here. If Ukraine had been at the competition, it may have stoked those issues more. In any case, the fourth country, my voice is all over the place. I've been talking nonstop for 2 weeks. I literally sound like a drag queen. And I love drag queens. That is not shade. I'm just saying I sound like a smoker. In any case, the fourth country on this list in terms of being screwed over by the jury was Switzerland, minus 64 points. So they were 64 points lower in the jury vote than they were in the televote. Granted, they still got 148 points from the jury, so it's still a lot. I thought they'd get a lot of jury points because this is so radio friendly. This is so like Despo Fuego, Despacito Mi Fuego. It still came 8th with the jury. So this is by no means bad. For Switzerland to come 8th with the jury in the grand final is amazing. But I would have expected this to be higher with the jury simply because it's so radio friendly.
And it looked amazing on stage because when you compare it with some of the other upbeat songs like Tamta or Zena from Belarus, there was no comparison in my books. It looked really slick, really modern, almost cinematic. But I think the jury's since maybe 2015 have kind of been moving away from the pop when they were the reason that Måns won. But ever since then, they've been kind of dragging down the poppier songs because even last year, Netta and Eleni, they came first and second, but the juries had marked them lower because they had Benjamin Ingrosso and Cesar Sampson higher than them. So I think the juries maybe are moving away from that pop sound and they're rewarding the big voices and the big vocals rather than the pop current factors. And maybe the EBU might need to reassess how they're grading or asking the juries to grade the songs.
Yes. So let's actually switch to the other end of the spectrum. Who the jury helped the most. And we got to kick it off with North Macedonia. 237 jury points. Second place overall. The televote only gave Tamara 58 points. Second place overall. Televoters put her 12th. So still very, very respectable. This was well deserved. I think the jury got this right. She was in a lineup with so many heavy hitters, including Russia's Sergei Lazarev early on, but she stood out. She really stood out vocally, emotionally, musically, even visually. North Macedonia got this right. They kept it pure. They kept it simple. She's so likable. She's just very, very likable. I was so touched to watch her reacting to the results because she didn't expect it. I spoke with the team, and in my head, I kept saying, and I told them explicitly, I said, y'all gonna finish sixth. Y'all gonna finish sixth overall. I don't know. I ended up coming eighth, so I wasn't too far off. This was just a standout. And this just goes to show, if you have a good singer with a good song, it doesn't matter where you're from. Your country could have a horrible voting record. Look at Portugal when they won with Salvador Sobral. It does not matter. Quality does win the day.
Well, that's kind of the case in point because in 2018, Macedonia had their worst ever result. IQ came, I think, last or second from last in the semi-final. Bam! 1 year later, they're the highest result in their history. And the thing about it is, Proud is not a song that I'll be going back to listen to on Spotify. The studio version does nothing for me. But Tamara was just so good on stage, and the staging was so effective because Macedonia, so many times they have an okay song and they destroy it with the staging. This year they outsourced it and they needed to do that, and everything worked well. But I kind of always knew when I saw it rising up, I was like, this is going to be like Cesar Sampson or like Benjamin Ingrosso last year. This is not going to stay up that high. But she still got a very respectable televote, and I loved how gracious she was because other acts, when they got their points and they were lower than expected, they did not look happy. But she was gracious. She cheered. She thanked the crowd, and like I think she knows she's going home to a hero's welcome to Macedonia. Like she's probably the biggest star now because she's bigger than Calliope.
Yeah, yeah, and well deserved. It was classic but modern. It just ticked so many boxes. I'm so happy for them. I hope this kind of renews their Eurovision spirit. Certainly Portugal saw a renaissance recently. And even if their results
and the Netherlands.
Oh, God,
the Netherlands,
yes.
Like Macedonia were on the verge of, like Netherlands had their 8-year streak. Macedonia were coming very close to matching that 8-year streak of non-qualification. And then a nuke came along and did it for Netherlands. So maybe Tamara could be Macedonia's a nuke. And in a few years' time, we'll all be off to Skopje.
You know, I would love that. You know what? We were looking into flights and some tourist stuff during the jury vote. We were like, yes, we need to be here. We should point out that North Macedonia finished 6 points ahead of Eurovision winner Duncan Laurence. That's a massive achievement. She was among the few acts that managed to beat the Netherlands in one of these categories. So well done to her. So Sweden was the overall winner of the jury vote. They got 12 points from 10 countries. We should point out the Netherlands, North Macedonia, and Italy each had 6 sets of 12 points, but Sweden got 10 of them. Yeah, I mean, this is a quality song, and it looked amazing. I do stand by the fact that there is a positive bias for Sweden among jurors, because you're never going to be ashamed to associate yourself with awarding points to such a quality music industry, a song born of that music industry like Sweden. That's not to say he didn't deserve it, because I could see why this won. It was so uplifting. It was around the same time as North Macedonia, wasn't it? They were both in the first half. It looked great. Yeah, the televoters clearly didn't agree. They ranked this significantly lower. And I actually felt bad for him when it was down. You know, they were going to announce the points, and people were like, oh, can Sweden do it? And then he got rather low points. He got 93 televotes compared to 239 jury votes. That difference of 146. Yeah, it's a quality entry is all I can say. I can see why this won. Personally, for me, North Macedonia had more emotional pull. It just felt more organic to her. It didn't feel as sleek, and I think that's a good thing. His song was very polished and sleek. And oftentimes, to me, that can numb the emotion, but the emotion was still there.
Yeah, see, it was very polished. It was like nearly like like not a professional pop star because he obviously is, but like nearly a big global pop star coming to perform his act in the interval, and people don't get the same connection with that. But to say that he flopped is kind of an overstatement because he
Yeah.
still came ninth with the people. Like he's in the top 10, the people's one of the people's favorite songs. It's just that he came from such a fall down to ninth, and like most countries would be thrilled. And
Oh, yeah.
I and it's still understandable because the song was a huge hit in Sweden. It's not as if it's some obscure song that the juries are just saving. And I think people do like it. It just didn't have the same connection and it didn't have the same feel of authenticity. Even though John was one of the co-writers on the track, um, like there wasn't the same impact as Italy or Netherlands or Macedonia. They all had something more to them, I think, that made it more relatable.
Another huge winner with the jury was the Czech Republic. They got 150 jury points. That put them in seventh position. But then with televoters, they only got 7 points. Yes, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 televote points. And that put them, televote rank, 24th. So near the bottom. I think jurors appreciated how this maintained its indie feel while still being polished. And that's hard to achieve because oftentimes when a group hits the professional stage, they lose that quirkiness, but this still had it. I think Albert is so charismatic. It's curious, when that song won ESCZ in the Czech Republic, a lot of Euro fans were like, ew, WTF, where's Barbara? Why didn't Barbara win? But this shows that the Czech Republic made the right decision because this really slayed with the juries.
It was kind of the flip of last year when the public saved Mikolas and the juries ranked him way lower in 2018. But I think maybe there needed to be some balancing out. I think while it's a fun summary song, I was very surprised to see it do so well with the juries. Like for whatever reason, it was the momentum. I don't know if it was just the indie feel, and maybe they have indie people who identify with that. But the staging was very good. It was very eye-catching. It really stood out. And the public was kind of surprising. But then at the end of the day, as a person at home, you can only vote for one. Well, you can vote for more than one song, but you tend to just vote for your favorite. So Czech Republic could be your second or third or fourth favorite, but you're not going to give them a vote. And I imagine that was the case with a lot of people, that they had Czech Republic as one of their favorites, but they didn't send a vote for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another big difference was Azerbaijan, 197 jury points, just 100 televotes, fifth with the jury, but eighth on television. And that's curious. The points often exaggerate the difference because the difference is 100 points, but then the rank difference is only 3.
Yeah.
So it's actually not that significant. Yeah, I would have expected televoters to really get behind this because of the visuals. Whereas curiously, the jury got more behind it. So all these theories we have in the past, like the TV viewers are more impacted by spectacle than jurors, maybe it's not true.
Like it comes down to little things though sometimes. I think that sometimes you can have a great stage show, but say, for example, if you can't see the person's face, people find it hard to connect with that performer. And you couldn't really see Chingiz's face much because there was so much going on with the robots and stuff that it was kind of blocked out, and they maintained like it was quite dark. And I think while impressive and while the song was catchy and stuff, maybe you didn't see enough with Chingiz, because at the end of the day, while Eurovision isn't a reality show, it still is a certain amount based on personality. And when you look and see a smiling Alexandra with KEiiNO, or you see a shadowy brooding Chingiz, which do you go for if they're both songs? And you might be like, oh, that Norwegian woman looks really nice and friendly, I'll send her my vote instead of this angry Azerbaijani.
And we should quickly, if you look at the top 3 finishers overall, the jury and televoters only agreed on one of these 3 being in the top 3. That was the Netherlands, second in the televote, third in the jury vote. It's curious, we don't have the consistency we used to have. Italy came second, they were third in the television vote and fourth in the jury vote. And Russia, which was third, came fourth in the TV ranking, but only ninth with the jury. Porg, why do you think our top 3 overall aren't all in the top 3 with the jurors and the televoters?
I don't know. And it's getting more and more bizarre every year, because it used to be kind of a way that the jury winner might be third with the televote or vice versa. But I don't think we've ever had such a discrepancy that the televote winner is so far down with the juries. I don't know. Like, I think people maybe are looking at for different things. The people at home are voting for the song they like the most, whereas the juries are given, you have to think of staging, you have to think of vocals, you have to think of lyrics, you have to think of all of this. And maybe they're not voting for the song that is their favorite. They're voting for a song, like you said, their name is beside it. So they're industry professionals and they're thinking, what will my peers think of? What song does
Yeah.
it look clever for me to vote for? It looks clever for me to vote for Sweden, perhaps. If I vote for Norway, even though I love the song, will people discredit me? And that could be getting more and more. And it's only in recent years where people are paying more attention to who's sitting on the juries and the lists are published and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, Sweden, which came first with the jury, was ninth with the public. North Macedonia, which was second with the juries, was 12th with the public. Only the Netherlands, third with the jury, was second with the public in that upper echelon. And we've got to talk about who the jury put last. The jury ranked Spain, Mickey, dead last, which blows my mind. If they had looked at the audience, they would have seen so many happy people, so many people moving, grooving, living, and loving, musically on point with the cultural identity. I am so upset by this.
Yeah, because this is the problem. I don't like the criteria that the juries have when they're voting because Spain, it was a modern song. You can imagine it being played everywhere. It was full of life, it was full of energy. They had one or two questionable staging props, which such as the puppet and the GoPro, but they weren't enough to like ruin the whole performance. And it was such a brilliant show closer and it was full of life and all the colors. And for once, I think Spain were very close to getting the staging right. And they had a good song. And it's unfair in a way because some of the other songs that have been marked down, I could understand. But the fact juries marked San Marino, while we all love Serhat did not deserve to be ranked higher than Mickey with the juries.
Yeah, I am really just upset for this. I hope this does not set Spain back. 2 years in a row now, they've had subpar results, and I don't think they were deserved. I don't know what the situation is, but thankfully, Spanish Euro fans are not out there saying Europe hates us. At least I've not read that. Whereas, like, for
Yes.
instance, in other instances, contestants say, oh, they blame other things. Like, people blaming Brexit for the UK result, I think it's so silly. People do not vote based on Brexit. People vote based on whether they're moved by a song, touched by an artist. And in this instance, things just didn't line up. It's not ideal, it's unfortunate, but you cannot blame Brexit.
It's ridiculous. If you think about it, the country that has been most affected by Brexit is Ireland. Where did Michael get all his points from? Ireland. The rest of the countries don't care what Britain is up to. Only Ireland has been impacted and Ireland still getting votes. So it is ridiculous to be blaming it on Brexit.
Thank you. Well said. You need to tweet that. That's going viral. In any case, that's what we think. What do you think? Are you living for the jury televote split? Do you agree more with the jurors or more with the televote? Let us know here on wiwibloggs.
And make sure to subscribe. And even though there's no live streams or anything like that, there will still be videos throughout the summer. So make sure to hit the notifications bell so you get updated whenever there's a new one.
And don't forget, you can be updated on your family's history by visiting My Heritage. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.